Eli Thompson woke up to the sound of the wind rustling through the tall grass outside his small cabin. The morning sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Eli rubbed his eyes, stretched his arms, and took a deep breath, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs. Today was just another day in the quiet town of Willow Creek, a place where everyone knew each other's name and news traveled faster than the wind. Eli had lived here all his life. He was small in stature, with a lean frame and quick hands, but his heart was as big as the plains that stretched beyond the town. People often overlooked him because of his size, but Eli had learned long ago not to let that bother him. He knew that strength wasn't always measured by height or muscle, and he had a mind that could think and act faster than most. After a simple breakfast of bread and coffee, Eli grabbed his hat and headed toward the stables. Horses had always been his passion, and caring for them brought him a quiet kind of joy that nothing else could. The stable smelled of hay and fresh earth, with the faint aroma of leather and horse sweat that was strangely comforting. He greeted each horse by name, patting their necks and murmuring soft words as he filled their water troughs and prepared their feed. The horses nickered softly, recognizing his voice and hands from years of gentle care. Eli moved efficiently, his small frame allowing him to slip between the horses and stalls with ease, a skill that made him especially good at handling even the more stubborn animals. As he worked, he noticed a few townspeople walking toward the stables, whispering and pointing. Eli looked up and saw Jed Harrison, the massive cowboy who everyone in Willow Creek knew. Jed was enormous, broad-shouldered, with arms as thick as tree trunks and a presence that seemed to fill the room even before he entered it. He was the kind of man people either respected or feared, and he liked to make sure that everyone knew it. Today, Jed's gaze landed on Eli and a smirk spread across his face. "You're too small for this work, aren't you?" Jed called out, his voice carrying easily across the stable yard. He laughed, a deep booming sound that made some of the townspeople step back slightly. "Why don't you go home and let the real men handle it?" Some of the workers and neighbors nearby chuckled nervously, unsure of whether to laugh or frown. Eli paused for a moment, feeling the familiar sting of being underestimated. He had faced it countless times before, and each time he had learned to turn it into determination. Eli didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked Jed in the eye, calm and steady. He wasn't going to argue or make a scene. He had something else in mind, something that would make everyone see that being small didn't mean being weak or incapable. Eli finished tending to the last horse and wiped his hands on his trousers. He walked out into the open yard where Jed was leaning against the fence, arms crossed, still smirking. Eli's mind raced with ideas, thinking quickly about how he could prove himself in a way that would surprise everyone. He knew he couldn't match Jed in sheer strength, but he could use his skill, speed, and intelligence to his advantage. "You know," Eli said quietly, but with confidence, "strength isn't always about how big you are." The words caught Jed off guard for a moment, and some of the onlookers turned to see what would happen next. Eli took a deep breath and smiled slightly, as if he already knew what he was about to do. "I think we can have a little competition," he added. Jed raised an eyebrow and laughed, a loud, booming sound that echoed through the town. "A competition? You against me? This I have to see," he said, his eyes glinting with amusement. The townspeople gathered around, curiosity written on every face. They had never seen Eli challenge Jed before, and now the excitement was building. Whispers ran through the crowd. Could the small man actually hold his own against the massive cowboy? Eli suggested a horse handling challenge, one that required more than just brute strength. It would be a race through a series of obstacles in the field behind the stables. The course had tight corners, narrow paths, and barrels to navigate around. Jed laughed again, clearly thinking it would be an easy win for him. "You'll crash before you even reach the first barrel," he said, shaking his head. But Eli's smile didn't falter. He had studied the horses in the field for months and had been practicing his routes in secret. He knew that his smaller size and quick thinking could make all the difference. The townspeople began placing bets quietly, some siding with Jed out of habit, and others quietly hoping for a surprise. Eli adjusted his hat and patted the horse he would ride that day, a strong, spirited mare named Bella. She whinnied softly as if sensing Eli's determination. He climbed into the saddle with practiced ease, his movements smooth and controlled. The anticipation in the air was almost tangible, and Eli could feel his heart beating faster, not from fear, but from excitement. Jed mounted his horse, a massive stallion named Bruno, and the contrast between the two men was striking. The townspeople whispered among themselves, many certain that the outcome was already decided. But Eli had learned that people often judged too quickly. Strength alone did not win challenges. Cleverness, planning, and calm nerves often mattered just as much, if not more. Eli took a moment to observe Jed's stance and the way he held the reins. He noticed that while Jed was powerful, he was not as agile as Eli. That was the edge he would use. Eli adjusted his grip, whispered a gentle command to Bella, and felt her muscles respond under him. She was ready. The town quieted as the signal to start was given. Eli and Jed spurred their horses forward and the race began. Jed charged ahead, his long strides quickly covering the ground. Eli, however, stayed focused, maneuvering Bella carefully around the first set of obstacles. His smaller size allowed him to take tighter turns, and his quick reflexes helped him anticipate Bella's movements perfectly. The crowd watched in amazement as Eli navigated the course with precision. Jed was powerful, but some of the tight corners slowed him down. Eli's careful planning and attention to detail began to show its advantage. People who had doubted him began to whisper in disbelief, their eyes widening as they realized that the small man might just be able to keep up, or even surpass the massive cowboy. Eli's mind was calm, his focus sharp. He didn't rush, but he also didn't hesitate. Every movement, every command to Bella was calculated, using both experience and intuition. The town watched, holding its breath as Eli's skill became increasingly apparent. This was not just a display of riding. It was a display of heart, intelligence, and determination. As they approached the final stretch of the course, Eli was close enough to see Jed's expression change. The massive cowboy was no longer smirking. His eyes widened slightly, and he seemed to realize that Eli might actually pull off the impossible. The crowd murmured, sensing that something extraordinary was happening. Eli felt a surge of pride, not from winning yet, but from knowing that he had challenged the expectations and doubts that had always followed him. The first part of the day ended there, with the townspeople buzzing with anticipation, eager to see what Eli would do next. He had planted the seed of surprise and respect, showing everyone that being small did not mean being weak, and that courage and intelligence could often outshine sheer size. Eli dismounted, patted Bella, and looked toward Jed with calm confidence, ready for whatever would come next. It was a day that nobody in Willow Creek would forget anytime soon. A day when the underdog, underestimated for years, quietly proved that true strength comes in many forms, and that the measure of a person is often found in courage, heart, and the ability to think beyond what others assume possible. The morning after Eli's quiet show of confidence, the town of Willow Creek was buzzing with anticipation. Word had spread quickly about the small man challenging Jed Harrison, the massive cowboy known for his strength and pride. People whispered to each other as they walked along the dirt streets, wondering what Eli would do next and whether he could truly compete with a man of Jed's size. The stable yard became a gathering place, and by mid-morning a crowd had begun to form. Children perched on fences, men leaned against their saddles, and women exchanged knowing smiles, all curious to witness what might become a memorable day in their town's history. Eli arrived at the stables, his mind calm but alert. He had spent the previous evening planning every detail of the upcoming challenge. It wasn't about raw power, it was about skill, strategy, and composure. He walked past the horses, patting each one gently and whispering encouraging words. Bella, his horse, responded with soft nickerings as if she understood the importance of the day. Eli adjusted her saddle and reins carefully, making sure everything was secure. Jed arrived shortly after, riding Bruno, his massive stallion. The horse's hooves kicked up clouds of dust and the crowd shifted, impressed by the sheer size of both rider and animal. Jed's confidence was obvious, and he wasted no time flexing his arms and showing off, making sure everyone saw just how dominant he was. Some people cheered, some laughed, but many eyes were on Eli, waiting to see how the smaller man would react to such a display. Eli climbed into the saddle, his movements smooth and precise. Despite his size, he carried himself with a quiet confidence that immediately drew attention. He didn't shout or boast. He simply nodded to the crowd and took a moment to breathe, feeling the rhythm of Bella beneath him. The horse shifted slightly, her muscles tensing in anticipation, and Eli felt a wave of calm determination wash over him. This wasn't just a competition. It was a chance to prove something far greater, that heart and intelligence could surpass strength and size. The townspeople fell silent as the challenge was announced. It would be a horse handling race across the field behind the stables, filled with obstacles designed to test speed, precision, and the rider's ability to control their mount. There were tight turns around barrels, narrow paths between posts, and sections where the horse needed to jump over small barriers. The course was demanding, but it was perfect for Eli's strengths. He knew every inch of the field, and had practiced maneuvering through obstacles in ways that larger, less agile riders often struggled with. Jed's expression remained confident, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. He had never seen Eli display such quiet determination before. Jed had always relied on his size and strength to dominate situations, but Eli's calm approach made him pause. He studied the small man, wondering what tricks or surprises he might have in store. The crowd, sensing the tension, leaned forward, eager to see the first move. When the starting signal was given, both riders spurred their horses forward. Jed's long strides allowed him to surge ahead immediately, covering ground quickly and making it seem as though the outcome would be predictable. Eli, however, stayed close, guiding Bella with precision. He didn't rush. Instead, he focused on each turn, each barrel, and each narrow path. His small frame allowed him to navigate corners more tightly than Jed, and his careful planning ensured that Bella responded instantly to every command. As they moved through the course, the townspeople began to notice something remarkable. Jed was strong and fast, but his size made some maneuvers difficult. He struggled slightly on tight turns, forcing Bruno to slow down. Eli, on the other hand, moved gracefully, anticipating every twist and obstacle. He shifted his weight subtly, guiding Bella with a combination of skill and intuition that allowed them to maintain momentum, even through the trickiest sections. The crowd murmured in surprise, realizing that Eli was not only keeping up, he was strategically closing the gap. By the midpoint of the course, both riders had become the center of attention. Children gasped, pointing at Eli's deft movements, while older townspeople nodded in admiration. Jed's smirk had faded slightly, replaced by a look of concentration. He was beginning to understand that this race would not be as easy as he had expected. Every obstacle required thought, precision, and control, qualities that Eli had in abundance. Eli's mind remained sharp. He anticipated the way Bella would respond, adjusted his reins at the exact moment, and kept his movements fluid. He didn't panic when a sudden gust of wind startled one of the horses near the edge of the field. Instead, he calmly guided Bella, giving her small, reassuring cues. The crowd watched in awe, realizing that Eli's approach was both intelligent and effective. He wasn't relying on strength, he was relying on skill, understanding, and harmony with his horse. Jed pushed forward, attempting to regain his lead, but Eli's careful navigation allowed him to stay within striking distance. The tension in the crowd grew. People whispered to one another, amazed at the display of skill from the man they had once underestimated. Even Jed's expression reflected a mixture of surprise and growing respect. He realized that he might be facing a competitor unlike any he had ever encountered. Eli's size had never seemed like an advantage, but his intelligence, preparation, and composure were proving that it could be. As they approached the final series of obstacles, the race became even more intense. Tight turns and small jumps required absolute precision, and the difference between victory and failure was minimal. Eli's movements were smooth and calculated. He leaned just enough to guide Bella without losing balance, shifted his weight subtly, and whispered commands that she responded to immediately. The crowd held its breath, sensing that the outcome was no longer certain. Jed pushed Bruno hard, trying to overcome Eli's clever maneuvers. The stallion struggled slightly with the tight turns, and though Jed was powerful, his approach lacked the finesse that Eli displayed. Every calculated movement from Eli allowed him to gain a slight advantage, and the gap between the riders began to shrink. The excitement in the crowd was palpable. People were on the edge of their seats, amazed at how the small man had managed to challenge someone so imposing. Eli felt a rush of determination. This was more than a race. It was a statement. He had been underestimated all his life, judged by size rather than ability. Today he was proving that intelligence, skill, and courage could surpass raw strength. Bella moved smoothly under him, responding perfectly to every subtle shift in balance. Eli's confidence was quiet but unwavering. He had prepared for this moment, and he was determined to show the town and Jed that he was more than capable. The final stretch was in sight. Both horses were moving at top speed, dust rising behind them, hooves thundering against the earth. Eli's heart pounded, not from fear but from exhilaration. He guided Bella with exact precision, his hands steady, his posture perfect. Jed's massive frame seemed unstoppable at first, but Eli's clever navigation of the obstacles had allowed him to keep pace. The townspeople were shouting encouragement, their voices blending into a roar of excitement. Eli's eyes focused on the finish line. Every ounce of skill, every careful movement, and every bit of preparation led to this moment. He leaned slightly forward, guiding Bella with fluid, confident motions. The small man who had been underestimated for years was now challenging the strongest cowboy in town, and the outcome was no longer obvious. The crowd gasped and cheered, sensing the approaching climax of a race that would be remembered for years to come. As they neared the last obstacle, Eli whispered to Bella, guiding her smoothly around a tight barrel and preparing for the final jump. The small man's heart was steady, his mind clear, and his hands firm. He felt a surge of pride and anticipation. For the first time in years, he was not just competing, he was proving that determination and intelligence could overcome what seemed impossible. The wind rushed past him, and the cheers of the townspeople filled the air, a chorus of excitement and admiration. At that moment, Eli realized something important. The race was not just about winning. It was about showing that no one should be underestimated because of size or appearance. It was about courage, skill, and heart. And as he guided Bella toward the final stretch, he knew that the outcome would leave a mark on the town, one that would be talked about for years. The crowd leaned forward, eyes wide, hearts racing, waiting to see what would happen next. The stage was set for an unforgettable conclusion. Eli had navigated every obstacle, proven his skill, and challenged expectations. What remained now was to see if his quiet confidence and cleverness could outshine the massive strength of Jed Harrison in the final moments of the race. The crowd could hardly believe what they were witnessing. Eli and Jed were neck and neck now, both riders pushing their horses to the limit. Dust rose in clouds around them, and the sound of pounding hooves echoed across the open field, mixing with the gasps and cheers of the townspeople. Children held onto fence posts, eyes wide with excitement, while adults exchanged looks of disbelief. Many had doubted Eli at the start of the race, certain that his small size would put him at a disadvantage, but now it was clear that the competition was far from over. Eli felt his heart pounding, not from fear but from determination. Every obstacle behind him was a reminder of how far he had come. Each tight turn he had navigated and every barrel he had circled had built his confidence. Bella moved with fluid precision beneath him, her muscles responding to every subtle shift in his balance and gentle command. Eli's focus was unshakable. He knew that winning this race would not only prove his skill but also demonstrate the importance of courage, intelligence, and preparation. Jed, for his part, was beginning to realize that brute strength alone would not carry him to victory. Bruno was a powerful horse, and Jed had ridden him with confidence and experience, but the tight turns and quick maneuvers required for this course were not his strongest points. He leaned forward, urging Bruno to pick up speed, but the larger horse struggled slightly around a tight barrel, giving Eli the opportunity to pull ahead just a fraction. The crowd noticed, leaning forward with excitement as the unexpected began to unfold. Eli's eyes scanned the course ahead. He had anticipated every jump, every turn, and every narrow path, but the final series of obstacles was more challenging than anything he had practiced. There was a narrow bridge over a small stream, followed by a sharp turn around a tall fence, and then the final sprint toward the finish line. Eli's mind raced, calculating each movement carefully. He knew he had to remain calm, control Bella's pace, and execute each maneuver with precision. One mistake could cost him the race, but he trusted in his preparation and his bond with the horse. As they approached the bridge, Jed surged forward, attempting to regain the lead. Bruno's powerful legs carried him quickly, and it seemed as if the massive cowboy would once again pull ahead. Eli leaned slightly, guiding Bella carefully onto the bridge. Her hooves tapped steadily against the wooden planks, and she moved with remarkable balance. The bridge was narrow, and any misstep could have been disastrous, but Eli's steady hands and calm voice kept Bella focused. The crowd gasped as both riders crossed the bridge side by side, a tense silence filling the air for a moment. The next obstacle was a sharp turn around a tall fence, and here Eli's agility began to shine. He leaned just enough to guide Bella around the corner, her hooves landing perfectly on the ground with each step. Jed, on the other hand, had to slow Bruno slightly to navigate the tight turn. The difference was small, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to give Eli a slight edge. The crowd noticed, murmuring among themselves as they realized that the small man was not only holding his own, but was now potentially ahead. Eli's focus was absolute. He had trained for moments like this, and every second counted. Bella responded instantly to his subtle commands, her movements synchronized perfectly with his. Eli felt a surge of exhilaration as he guided her smoothly over a small jump, clearing it without hesitation. The crowd erupted in cheers, some clapping, others shouting words of encouragement. Even Jed's expression betrayed a hint of surprise and admiration. He had underestimated Eli's skill, and had not anticipated the combination of intelligence, calmness, and precision that the small man possessed. The final stretch of the race was in sight. Both riders urged their horses forward, the ground trembling beneath the pounding hooves. Eli's mind remained clear, focused entirely on guiding Bella through the remaining obstacles and toward the finish line. He whispered gentle words, shifted his weight just enough to maintain balance, and let the horses' momentum carry them forward. The wind rushed past him, and he could feel the excitement building with every step. Jed pushed Bruno harder, trying to regain lost ground. The massive cowboy's strength and experience were undeniable, and he managed to gain a slight advantage on the open stretch of land. But Eli's careful navigation through the obstacles had preserved Bella's energy, and she responded with renewed vigor as they approached the final sprint. The crowd could hardly believe the intensity of the moment. Some were on their tiptoes, others held their breath, all eyes glued to the two riders as they neared the finish line. Eli felt a mixture of adrenaline and calm determination. He had trained for this day, and he knew that every small decision he made now would determine the outcome. He leaned slightly forward, guiding Bella with precision, her legs pumping with strength and rhythm. The final obstacle was a low fence which they needed to clear before the finish line. Eli whispered to Bella, feeling the horse respond instantly. With a smooth motion, Bella leapt over the fence, landing gracefully on the other side. The crowd gasped and erupted in applause, amazed at the seamless coordination between rider and horse. Jed and Bruno followed closely, the massive horse clearing the fence with power but slightly less finesse than Bella. Eli's careful planning had given him a slight lead, and now it was up to him to maintain it to the finish line. Every step counted, and Eli leaned into the ride, using his balance, timing, and calm confidence to guide Bella forward. The crowd's excitement reached a peak, with shouts and cheers echoing across the field. People were beginning to realize that something extraordinary was happening. As they approached the final stretch, Eli's focus sharpened even more. The finish line was only a few hundred feet away, and he could feel Bella's strength and determination matching his own. He adjusted his posture slightly, ensuring that every ounce of her energy was directed forward. Jed, seeing Eli pull ahead, urged Bruno with all his might, but the difference in strategy and skill was becoming clear. Eli's careful navigation, calm demeanor, and perfect coordination with Bella had created a lead that would be difficult to overcome. The crowd was on their feet now, cheering wildly, encouraging both riders. Children waved their arms and adults clapped, caught up in the excitement and intensity of the moment. Eli's heart raced, but his mind remained steady. He had come this far through preparation, skill, and determination, and he refused to let the moment slip away. Bella responded beautifully, her hooves striking the ground with precision and power. Each step brought them closer to the finish line and to the recognition that Eli had worked so hard to earn. Jed pushed Bruno to his limits, the massive horse straining with every stride. The crowd watched, holding their breath as the two riders thundered toward the finish line. It was clear now that the outcome would be determined not by size or strength alone, but by skill, intelligence, and the bond between rider and horse. Eli's calm, calculated approach had given him the edge, and the townspeople could sense that a historic moment was unfolding before their eyes. Eli leaned slightly, guiding Bella with perfect timing, and with one final burst of energy they surged forward. The finish line approached, and the crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers and gasps. Eli's heart pounded, his mind focused entirely on the moment. This was the culmination of years of being underestimated, of quiet determination, and of skill honed through patience and practice. He felt a wave of pride and exhilaration, knowing that every choice he had made led to this instant. As they crossed the finish line, the crowd exploded in applause, cheering for Eli's remarkable display of skill and courage. Children jumped up and down, adults clapped and shouted, and even Jed slowed Bruno, his expression one of awe and growing respect. Eli dismounted, patting Bella gently and whispering words of praise. He had done it. He had not only kept up with the massive Cowboy, but had taken the lead and finished the race with grace and precision. The townspeople surrounded him, congratulating him on a race that would be remembered for years. They marveled at how someone so small had managed to challenge and compete with a man of Jed's size, showing that true strength came from intelligence, courage, and careful planning. Eli's quiet confidence and skill had transformed the way the town viewed him, proving that determination and heart could overcome even the most imposing challenges. Jed approached, his expression a mixture of surprise and admiration. He extended his hand toward Eli, who shook it firmly, smiling with humility. The massive Cowboy had been challenged, tested, and now he had gained respect for the small man who had surprised everyone. The lesson of the day was clear. Size and strength were not the only measures of ability, and true talent often revealed itself in moments of courage and cleverness. The excitement after the race still lingered in the air. Dust floated gently above the field as the townspeople slowly began to gather around Eli, who was dismounting Bella with calm pride. The crowd's cheers were still echoing, and children ran up to pat the horse and congratulate Eli. He smiled warmly, acknowledging the congratulations with quiet humility. He had proven something far greater than his ability to ride a horse. He had shown that courage, skill, and determination could overcome the assumptions people often made about size and strength. Jed Harrison, the massive Cowboy, stood a few feet away, brushing dust off his trousers. His massive frame seemed slightly less intimidating now, softened by the realization that Eli's victory had been hard-earned and well-deserved. Jed's pride had been challenged, and for the first time, he looked at Eli with genuine respect. Slowly he approached the small man, and the crowd fell into a hush, curious to see what would happen. "You did good," Jed said finally, his deep voice carrying a mixture of surprise and admiration. "I didn't think anyone could keep up with me on that course. But you didn't just keep up, you led it and you finished strong." Eli looked at Jed and nodded, accepting the compliment with a simple smile. He had no desire to boast or belittle anyone. Today was about proving his own abilities, not putting others down. The crowd began to cheer again, louder this time, clapping and shouting in support of the two men. Some people patted Eli on the back, others nodded approvingly, and a few even shook their heads in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. Children ran around, mimicking the movements of the horses, laughing and shouting with joy. The race had become more than a competition. It had turned into a lesson for everyone watching. It was a reminder that intelligence, preparation, and courage could triumph over raw strength and assumptions. Eli led Bella over to a quiet corner of the field, letting her drink from a bucket of water while he caught his own breath. He looked around and saw the smiles on the faces of the townspeople, the pride in their eyes, and the excitement that had spread like wildfire throughout Willow Creek. For years, Eli had been underestimated, often overlooked because of his small size. People had doubted his abilities in many areas, but today, he had proven that true strength came in many forms, and that determination and skill could overcome almost any obstacle. Jed walked over slowly, still watching Eli closely. "I have to admit," he said, scratching the back of his head, "I thought I had this race in the bag. I never expected you to come out on top. You rode smart, you planned carefully, and you stayed calm when it mattered most. That's something I can respect." Eli nodded again, appreciating Jed's words. He understood that respect earned through performance was far more valuable than empty praise. And Jed's acknowledgement carried weight because it came from someone who had been confident in his own abilities. The townspeople gathered around, asking questions and praising both riders. Some wanted to know how Eli had trained, others were curious about his strategies, and many simply wanted to express their admiration. Eli explained patiently that it wasn't just about strength or size. It was about understanding your horse, planning your moves carefully and staying calm under pressure. He encouraged the younger riders in the crowd to focus on developing their own skills, to practice consistently, and to believe in themselves even when others doubted them. Children crowded around Bella, gently stroking her neck and brushing her mane. Eli knelt beside them, explaining how to communicate with horses through subtle movements and calm words. He wanted them to understand that patience and kindness were as important as skill and strength. The children listened intently, wide-eyed and fascinated as he demonstrated small techniques that made riding easier and safer. For a small man who had always been underestimated, Eli had become a teacher, showing that knowledge and heart could inspire others just as much as physical strength could. Jed lingered nearby, watching the interactions with a thoughtful expression. He had always relied on his size and presence to assert authority, but today he had witnessed something different. Eli's quiet confidence, his intelligence, and his careful approach to challenges had left a lasting impression. He realized that he had learned something important as well, that underestimating others could lead to unexpected surprises, and that respect was earned through skill, dedication, and courage, not just strength. As the day wore on, the townspeople continued to gather around the field, talking about the race and Eli's remarkable performance. Word spread quickly, and soon even people who had not been present came to hear the story firsthand. They marveled at how the small man had challenged one of the strongest cowboys in town, and had held his own, not with brute force, but with intelligence, preparation, and calm determination. The excitement created a sense of unity and pride among the townspeople, who realized that challenges could be overcome in many ways, and that appearances were often misleading. Eli took a moment to walk through the crowd, thanking people for their support and listening to their stories. Many shared their own experiences of being underestimated or overlooked, and Eli offered words of encouragement and hope. He reminded them that courage and perseverance often mattered more than size or power, and that anyone who worked diligently and believed in themselves could achieve remarkable things. The crowd responded warmly, inspired by the example Eli had set that day. Jed approached Eli once more, extending a hand. "I think I've learned something today," he said. "It's not always about who's bigger or stronger. It's about thinking ahead, staying calm, and using your strengths wisely. You've shown me that today, and I respect that." Eli shook Jed's hand firmly, grateful for the recognition. The massive cowboy's acknowledgement reinforced the lesson that had been demonstrated throughout the day. That intelligence, skill, and courage could overcome even the most daunting challenges. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the field. Eli led Bella back toward the stable, glancing around at the smiling faces of the townspeople. The race had ended, but its impact would linger. Children continued to play, imitating the movements of the horses while adults discussed the lesson they had witnessed. The entire town had been reminded that appearances were not the only measure of ability, and that determination, intelligence, and skill could achieve extraordinary results. As Eli tended to Bella, brushing her coat and offering her a final treat for her hard work, he felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. He had proven something important not just to Jed or the townspeople, but to himself as well. Years of being underestimated had shaped him, teaching him resilience, patience, and the importance of preparation. Today, all of those lessons had come together in a way that left a lasting impression on everyone who had watched. Jed remained nearby, observing quietly. He had spent much of his life relying on his size and strength, but today he had witnessed a different kind of power, the power of calm determination, careful planning, and unwavering confidence. He realized that he had been challenged in a way he had never anticipated, and that challenge had left him with a new respect for those who approached obstacles with intelligence rather than force alone. The townspeople gradually began to leave, carrying with them stories of the race, the skill displayed by Eli, and the surprising outcome. They spoke of the lessons learned and the excitement of watching a small man rise to the occasion against a larger, stronger competitor. Children chattered excitedly, replaying the moments of the race in their minds while adults reflected on the deeper meaning behind the event. Eli had not only won a race, he had created a story that would be remembered for years, one that celebrated courage, intelligence, and determination over mere size. As night fell over Willow Creek, Eli stood quietly in the stable, watching the stars begin to appear. The field was empty now, save for Bella, who nuzzled his shoulder softly. Eli smiled, feeling a sense of contentment and accomplishment. He had faced doubt, challenge, and expectation, and he had emerged not just victorious in a race, but as a symbol of resilience and skill for the town. The day had been long and exhausting, but the lessons learned and the respect earned were worth every moment. Eli thought about the future and how he could continue to inspire others in Willow Creek. He realized that true strength was not measured by size or force, but by courage, intelligence, and the ability to stay calm and focused under pressure. The town had witnessed this lesson firsthand, and he knew that it would influence the way people approached challenges for years to come. He gently patted Bella once more, whispering thanks for her unwavering support. The horse had played a key role in demonstrating the lesson, and Eli treated her with the same respect and care he had shown all the horses in the stable. It was a reminder that partnership, trust, and understanding were just as important as skill and courage when facing challenges. As the stars shone brightly overhead, Eli left the stable and walked toward his small cabin, feeling the cool night air on his face. He reflected on the events of the day, grateful for the opportunity to demonstrate his abilities and inspire others. The story of the race, his victory, and the lessons learned would continue to be told in Willow Creek for generations, reminding everyone that appearances could be deceiving and that true. The morning after the race dawned bright and clear, the sunlight spilling over Willow Creek like a promise of a new beginning. The field where Eli had proved himself the day before was quiet now, the dust settling from the commotion, but the stories of his victory had already begun to spread. Townspeople walked through the streets, talking animatedly about what had happened, sharing every detail with neighbors, friends, and anyone who would listen. Children skipped along the paths, repeating bits of the race, their eyes sparkling with excitement as they acted out the daring maneuvers of the small man who had defied expectations. Eli woke early as usual, stretching and taking a deep breath of the crisp morning air. He felt a quiet satisfaction settle in his chest. The race had been more than a test of skill. It had been a lesson for the whole town about courage, determination, and the power of using one's mind alongside strength. Eli had never sought fame or recognition, but the respect he had earned from the townspeople and even from Jed Harrison, the massive cowboy, felt deeply rewarding. Today he would continue the work that had always mattered to him, caring for the horses and helping the town in any way he could. As he approached the stables, he noticed the first wave of townspeople arriving, eager to see him and Bella. They had come not to challenge him, but to celebrate him, to ask questions, and to seek advice. Eli greeted each person warmly, answering questions patiently and sharing small pieces of wisdom he had learned through years of careful observation and practice. Children crowded around, excitedly asking about how he had navigated the obstacles with such skill. Eli knelt beside them, demonstrating gentle techniques for guiding horses and explaining the importance of calmness and focus. Their eyes widened with fascination as they watched him work, hanging on every word. Jed arrived soon after, riding slowly and thoughtfully. There was no smirk this time, no display of power or intimidation. Instead, he appeared reflective, quietly acknowledging the lessons of the previous day. As he tied Bruno near the stables, he watched Eli interact with the townspeople and the horses, noticing the calm authority and quiet confidence the small man carried. Jed approached Eli, offering a nod of respect rather than a challenge. "You've changed the way I see things," Jed said, his voice steady but sincere. "I've always relied on my size and strength, but yesterday I saw something different. I saw skill, courage, and intelligence. You've shown me and everyone else that there's more to strength than what meets the eye." Eli smiled and nodded, accepting the compliment with humility. He had never needed to prove anything to Jed personally, but knowing that even the massive cowboy had learned from the experience made the victory feel complete. The townspeople continued to gather, bringing with them small gifts of appreciation, baskets of fruit, flowers, and handwritten notes praising Eli's skill and courage. It was a celebration not of competition but of inspiration. Eli accepted the gestures graciously, reminding everyone that the true reward was not recognition, but the satisfaction of doing one's best and proving to oneself that challenges could be overcome. Throughout the day, Eli worked with the townspeople, teaching them small skills that could help them handle horses more effectively. He showed how subtle shifts in weight could guide a horse through a tight turn, how calm and consistent commands could prevent panic, and how preparation and observation often mattered more than raw strength. The lessons were simple but profound, and the people of Willow Creek listened attentively, eager to learn from someone who had demonstrated excellence through patience, intelligence, and practice. Jed lingered nearby, watching and learning. He had always been proud of his own abilities, but now he realized that he could gain something even more valuable from observing Eli. The massive cowboy began to ask questions, genuinely curious about techniques he had never considered. Eli responded patiently, showing him small adjustments and explaining the reasoning behind each movement. For the first time, Jed understood that skill and heart could rival size and power, and he approached the lessons with humility, something the townspeople had never seen from him before. By late afternoon, the excitement of the previous day had transformed into a quiet sense of community pride. The story of Eli's race had spread far beyond the field, reaching homes, shops, and even neighboring towns. People spoke of the small man who had challenged the massive cowboy and emerged victorious, not through force but through intelligence, preparation, and unwavering determination. Children acted out the race in the streets, imitating the movements of horses and the clever maneuvers Eli had used. Adults spoke in hushed tones of the lesson that had been learned. Never underestimate someone based on size, and never assume that strength alone determines success. Eli took a moment to walk through the town, observing the reactions of the people around him. He saw smiles, laughter, and admiration in nearly every face. He saw children who now believed that they could achieve great things regardless of their size or limitations. He saw adults reconsidering how they judged ability and skill, learning a valuable lesson about respect and perseverance. For Eli, the day had become more than a personal triumph. It had become a moment of inspiration, one that would linger in the town's memory for years to come. As evening approached, the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden glow over Willow Creek. Eli returned to the stable, brushing Bella and preparing her for the night. He paused to reflect on the events of the past 2 days. The race had been challenging, and the attention he had received was unexpected, but it had confirmed something he had always known. Strength and courage could take many forms, and the most important battles were often fought not with force, but with intelligence, preparation, and heart. Jed approached once more, this time with a thoughtful expression. "You've given the town a lot to think about," he said quietly. "And you've given me a lot to think about too. I've learned that being big doesn't mean being the best, and being small doesn't mean being weak. You've shown all of us what it means to be truly strong." Eli nodded, appreciating the sincerity in Jed's voice. The massive cowboy extended a hand which Eli shook firmly, the gesture sealing a newfound respect between the two men. The townspeople began to disperse, leaving the field with stories to tell and lessons to remember. Some stayed behind to help Eli with the horses, eager to practice the techniques he had shown them. Others walked away, still talking about the excitement and the remarkable skills they had witnessed. Eli watched them go, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. He had not only proven his own abilities, but he had also inspired the people around him to think differently, to approach challenges with courage and intelligence, and to respect the talents of others regardless of appearances. Night fell over Willow Creek, bringing with it a peaceful quiet that contrasted sharply with the excitement of the previous day. Eli led Bella back to her stall, giving her a gentle pat and whispering words of thanks. The horse had been a loyal companion and a partner in the race, responding perfectly to his guidance and instincts. Eli knew that their bond had been a key part of his success, and he treated her with the same care and respect that he had always shown to the animals he worked with. As Eli stepped outside, the stars began to twinkle overhead, shining brightly in the clear night sky. He took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs, and reflected on the lessons of the past days. He had faced doubt, challenge, and expectation, and he had emerged not only victorious in a race, but as a symbol of determination, intelligence, and courage for the entire town. Willow Creek would remember this moment for years, and the story of the small man who had challenged the massive cowboy would inspire children and adults alike to believe in their own abilities and to approach challenges with confidence and heart. Eli walked slowly through the town, noting the quiet streets and the homes bathed in the soft glow of lantern light. He thought about the people he had inspired and the lessons they would carry forward. The race had been more than a competition. It had been a demonstration of resilience, skill, and the power of believing in oneself. He felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that his efforts had created a lasting impact, not just in the moment of victory, but in the way the town would think about strength, courage, and respect for years to come. Jed watched from a distance, leaning against his horse, reflecting on the events that had unfolded. He realized that true greatness came not only from physical ability, but also from the heart, mind, and careful preparation. He had learned humility and respect through Eli's example. Understanding that size and strength were only one part of the equation, the massive cowboy now carried with him a renewed perspective, one that he would share with others and pass on to the younger generation of riders in the town. Eli finally returned to his cabin, the quiet night wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. He felt a deep sense of peace and accomplishment, knowing that the race had been a turning point not just for himself, but for the entire town. His journey of being underestimated had reached a powerful conclusion, one that showed the value of courage, skill, intelligence, and determination. He smiled, thinking of the children who would now look up to him, inspired to believe in themselves and to approach life's challenges with confidence and